The voice of Texas, Edd Hendee on the morning show. Good morning. Grab a cup of coffee, settle in. Let's talk about it. Hour number 2. Let's check in with Congressman John Culberson from Washington, D.C. Good morning, sir. Nice to have you with us on The Voice.
Good morning, Ed. Always great to be with you, my friend.
Thank you, sir. The couple of rumblings going through Washington, D.C. of whether the United States of America should be shipping arms to the Syrian rebels. I sent you a Glenn Beck video of the coarseness, the inhumanity of this civil war in Syria. But basically, I don't like Assad, the president, but I don't think I like the rebels either. Should the U.S. be involved in this, and who is pushing us this direction?
Absolutely not. We should not be anywhere near Syria. We've got lunatics on both sides that will, no matter how that horrible tragedy turns out, it's going to be bad for the United States and Israel and friends of the United States. We passed in the Defense Appropriations Bill an amendment prohibiting any involvement in Syria of any kind by U.S. military with U.S. military aid unless the Congress approves it. And as we've talked about before, the one way to control this lawless president is with the money. It works every time. So our appropriations process is the most powerful tool to rein in Barack Obama and keep him on course. But the Syria disaster is something the U.S. is not going to get involved in. The House, John McCain, I don't know what they're doing over there in the Senate. You never can keep up with those guys. This is a deeply felt issue in the House, Ed. There are a couple of House members spoke up at a couple of meetings, and I joined, sort of led the chorus in opposition, and there's overwhelming opposition among House Republicans to get involved in Syria.
Now, of course, the House can pass an appropriations bill, which is good legislative work, and I tap the tip of the hat to you guys, barring this. But I don't know that the House actually approved the sale of 20 F-16s to Egypt. Can you comment on that? Because that sale was going through. I don't know if the House approved it. How does the president?
No, we did not.
So I appreciate that, but then how does the president operate outside of the limits of what the House has authorized?
When you've got a guy like this in the White House who doesn't care what the Constitution or the law says, ignores even the courts of appeals and the will of the public in everything that he does, and just relentlessly pursuing his own hardcore left-wing socialist agenda, we can put restrictions on the appropriations bill, but even if the Senate doesn't approve them, when he violates the existing law or tries to, for example, like Hillary tried to forgive, I think it was a $1.5 billion worth of loans that Egypt still owed us, and
right.
The White House doesn't have that authority, so the Appropriations Committee chairman of that subcommittee, which is Kay Granger of Fort Worth, who is just terrific, a Republican from Fort Worth, she wrote a letter and shut it down. So we can shut down something like, and I'm pretty confident she stopped the F-16s as well. I remember talking to her about that on the floor a week or two ago and asked her about it. Were you able to stop the F-16s? And I feel like she told me she did, because as the chairman, for example, of the Foreign Operations Appropriations Subcommittee, all the money that's spent on foreign affairs has to flow through Kay Granger and her subcommittee, and if she spots a violation of existing law or the money is being spent in a way that was not previously approved by Congress, she can write a letter to the State Department or to the USAID or whatever and pretty well shut it down, just as I can. My subcommittee is the Veterans Affairs and Military Construction. Each one of us with different jurisdiction has the ability to basically, Ed, as you've said, stand on Obama's air hose. And even if Congress hasn't finally passed the law, this is an incredible committee, and it's really the secret to controlling Barack Obama is to control the money, and ultimately we've got to restore absolutely transparent earmarks that don't increase spending, because that's how we'll secure the border, by the way. I can't send extra money to hire marshals or judges or prosecutors for the border because it's considered an earmark, and we can't force Obama to obey the law when it comes to securing the border. So we've got to get the earmarks back, but in a transparent way that doesn't increase spending to prevent abuse by a few knuckleheads. It's a powerful tool controlling the money, but we don't have full control over the money today. But that's how I believe Kay Granger did stop the F-16s, Ed.
Okay. Then this appropriations bill that you guys passed in the House then goes to the Senate. And if the Senate does not complete that appropriations bill, then you may get a continuing resolution, at which point the House limitation doesn't exist.
It applies if the continuing resolution, if we went to a continuing resolution, continues the law from the last appropriations bill that actually passed the Congress and was signed by the President. So if that previous appropriations bill that you're continuing had good language in it that you liked, that good language is continued. If it's got bad language, then you're continuing with the bad language. That's how that thing works. But
when is the last appropriations bill, defense appropriations bill, that was passed by both houses and signed by the President?
Last year. We're operating under it. That was what we're going to do is probably the same thing we did last year. I hope we're going to wind up passing a partial appropriations bill that'll be national defense, law enforcement, and Homeland Security, and pick up probably maybe one or two others. I'd love to get the foreign operations bill done, but for example, in the House, we're just cutting the heck out of all of it except Israel. You know, our friends around the world, we cut off Pakistan and a lot of we're staying out of this amendment we added to the defense the ones that have passed so far have been the defense appropriations bill, military construction. That's been through the both houses of Congress. It's been through, the House, and we've also passed, and we're going to probably be able to pass the Commerce, Justice, Science bill, the Agriculture Appropriations bill. For example, I put an amendment on the Agriculture Appropriations bill, Ed, that says states lose all their welfare money and food stamp money unless they verify eligibility. And the existing eligibility requirements are you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be here lawfully, you have to work, you have to be looking for work, you have to be a full-time student, et cetera. And that amendment, I put that on the Agriculture Appropriations bill in the House. So we're trying to get as many of those through as we can, and when it comes to September 30th, we'll see how many we can, we might have to do 3 or 4 or 5 in complete, that are totally complete, and then the others like Health and Human Services or Foreign Affairs, where there's just such a huge difference of opinion on between the Republican House and the liberal Democrat Senate and the liberal White House, that we just do 4 or 5 bills that have all the detail, and then the remaining, like Health and Human Services, Foreign Affairs, probably Interior, because we want to totally wipe out our bill, wipes out the EPA, really cuts them severely.
Okay, my eyes have glazed over.
Sorry. Okay,
they're
sorry.
Completely glazed over. Let me get to another question here, on the debt limit. The debt limit, again, you guys, this should have expired about June. The Treasury's been moving money around and robbing Peter to pay Paul, and somewhere between Labor Day and Thanksgiving, the U.S. is going to run out of money. They're going to, in order to pay their debts and to pay their bills, and the Congress is going to have to increase the debt limit in order for the government to function. What is the plan that is coming from leadership, and what will the leadership insist that we get out of this? Because obviously we're going to have to increase the debt limit again. What will we get in return?
Well, I've been working on this aggressively, Ed, and pushing in the Republican Study Committee, which is the most conservative members of the House that I'm a member of, have been since I got here, to make sure that we don't pass another debt ceiling increase unless we have an achievable, genuine solution that will help save the country from bankruptcy, in particular Medicare and Social Security. We're getting mixed signals out of Boehner's office as to what he's going to propose in exchange for the debt ceiling. But there's we're the conservatives in the House, and we make up 75% of the House Republican majority, are adamant that they all feel as I do, that we're done. I am absolutely done with debt ceilings unless we get a real achievable reduction.
Well, what is it that you would want if I turn the keys of the kingdom over to you? What would you ask for?
Well, we have to, first of all, be able to achieve it and be able to get it. And I would think the thing that would be the most achievable would be rescuing Social Security from bankruptcy. If you're under the age of 45, it already doesn't exist for you. So that one, you gradually raise the retirement age for people under the age of 45 by a month or two, depending on when they're, if they're 44, they retire a month later or 2 months later, et cetera. That makes a huge difference in saving Social Security from bankruptcy. That's what's just annihilating and devouring all our money, are these social welfare programs. And then secondly, the Medicare program is absolutely going bankrupt, and even more quickly. If you're 54 years of age or younger, the Medicare Hospital Fund is already bankrupt. It can only pay 50 cents on the dollar. And Paul Ryan's got a plan to save that program from bankruptcy. Those would be the two that would probably be the most achievable. And then third, what I'd, of course, love to do, and we've passed now 34 times out of the House, is completely repeal Obamacare. And we've defunded it in the Health and Human Services bill. I really didn't mean to get into that much detail, but my point was you can't pass a Health and Human Services appropriations bill because we defund Obamacare. We shut off all the employees in another appropriations bill. We fire all the IRS agents that would enforce it.
But these bills never go anywhere, so
they won't go anywhere. The Senate won't pass them,
and the average person listening thinks when you guys say we passed a bill, they think like, holy mackerel, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's the House version that goes to the Senate where it dies.
It dies.
Goes nowhere. And if it ever made it to the office, if it ever made it to the desk of the President of the United States, he would veto it.
Right. It's got to be achievable. We have to pick a goal that you can actually reach. You don't want to damage the full faith and credit of the United States, and we'll do our best to avoid that. But I'm just truly done. We're literally at a turning point in American history where we will become like Argentina or Greece or Spain. Apparently Spain is Obama's role models, Chicago, Illinois, California. Look at California for the future if we don't stop this guy from doing the damage that he's done and his party. So this is critical. So it's important to pick an achievable goal that you've got a shot at doing. He'll never sign, the Senate will never pass these a complete repeal of Obamacare, although I'd love to do it. That'd be the best. If you could wave a magic wand, that and repeal Dodd-Frank would be spectacular. But I think it's probably more achievable right now until we get the Senate in a year, and I think we really can win the Senate next year, and then get rid of this guy. We do damage control, slow him up as much as we can, prevent the implementation as much as we can of Obamacare, and pray and hope our Republican candidate for president in 2016 has got some, real conservative credentials and backbone, and that we get the Senate next year to repeal Obamacare. But in the meantime, this fall, Ed, it's got to be achievable, and I think that's going to probably be saving Social Security and Medicare from bankruptcy, and then maybe some sort of tax reform. Leadership's talking about tax reform, but they won't tell us exactly what they're
that's a lot
thinking
to put
about
in this package. And again, what I see is the difference in my overall summarily simple reduction of this is that the House can be obviously doing a good job passing bills and send them over to the Senate, but the fact is the Senate doesn't have to pick any of them up. They do not have to take a single one of them up. You guys can do great work. It's like writing a book and hand it to someone who's illiterate. It'll never be read.
That's it.
But with the debt limit, it's a whole different ballgame. They have to have your approval of the increase in debt limit. You actually they must get your approval on this.
Bingo.
Or else the debt limit must. This is the one moment where the House gets to say, we're not doing this unless we get 1, 2, 3.
That's right.
I get it from you what you want. What I want to know is from the leadership, have we seen a package come out yet?
No, we have not seen a package come out yet. What I just described to you is what the overwhelming majority of House conservatives are looking for, and I've been particularly aggressive on this because I don't want to go through another, it almost felt like the leadership was doing this stuff at the last minute. You can't do this. This is too important. It's too vital to save the country, and you can't put the full faith and credit of the United States through this. That's a critical bargaining point for us. The leverage at the debt ceiling is our most powerful tool. And the second leverage we've got is the appropriations process. Those bills do have to pass. You've got to get the defense bill done, Homeland Security, law enforcement, veterans and military construction. We've got to get the most important appropriations bills done. And so that's another powerful point of leverage. But the most powerful, you're right, is the debt ceiling.
Yeah,
that's
the
the
one
big
where
one.
you guys get the up or down vote, and it counts. Congressman, you hang on a second. I'm going to come back. We got to take a quick break.
Be right here.
When we come back, I want to ask you about this the vote on the amendments to limit the NSA. There were two of them.
Right.
They apparently, you guys passed one of them. The other one you voted against. But the story is this morning is that one that you voted against may actually come back again. We'll talk about it next on The Voice of Texas. 724, The Voice of Texas, Edd Hendee on the Morning Show. Congressman John Culberson, the Texas 7th District, right here in the Harris County area, joins us from Washington, D.C. Congressman, last week there was two votes on amendments to defund the NSA or to limit the NSA's ability to collect phone data. The most sweeping one was put forth by Representative Justin Amash, Republican of Michigan. He basically gutted the NSA. You voted against that. Why?
Because I want to rein back the NSA and see their program make doubly sure that it's exactly what they promised us, and that is they cannot listen to Americans without a court order. They can't even pick up any information about Americans in their phone calls and their personal lives unless they've got a court order and specific information on a specific American. But the Amash Amendment completely annihilated the entire program, just shut the whole thing down. There was a second alternative amendment that the press still will not report that was by Congressman Pompeo of Kansas, and that one I voted for because it guaranteed that the NSA could not spend any money to pick up the content of an American phone call, that they couldn't even store content or detail about an American's phone call without a court order. In fact, they can't even target Americans under the amendment that I voted for, because we had two choices, and these are appropriations amendments, so they're like a light switch. You're either turning the money on or off, and Amash's amendment just wiped out the entire NSA program, and they've documented that they've prevented at least 54 violent terrorist attacks in the United States through the NSA program, and they showed us in classified briefings that they are getting court orders. I don't worry about the professionals at the NSA. I do worry about the political hacks. Obama's misuse of the IRS is now documented. It's just outrageous. I don't want Obama anywhere near the NSA program, but the professionals are doing a good job. I didn't want to destroy the entire program, so I voted for the alternative amendment, which guaranteed that they would follow the existing law, which requires a court order before they can they have to prove to a judge under the Fourth Amendment that they've actually got information, like the Boston bombers, for example, are actually talking to some terrorist overseas.
Well, and the problem is that for me as an American, I have no problem with the government taking actions to keep my family, my environment, my listeners, but my extended friends safe as well from terrorist attacks. But the problem is that basically these guys, you give them a bigger haystack, they really can't find the needle. They couldn't, with the Russians telling them the Tsarnaev brothers were a threat to them, they couldn't even follow them in and out of the country. What good does listening to phone calls from all over the world do for them?
Well, we've got in the case of the Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, it's just inconceivable that they weren't immediately tracked down. The information was apparently given by the Russians to our law enforcement community in the United States. And I don't understand, Ed. It makes absolutely no sense. But the NSA professionals in the classified briefings that I've been in have walked us through all this, and they're clearly getting court orders and following the law. The lifelong military professionals that run the NSA are not the problem. But we do need to make absolutely certain that they are not listening or looking at Americans at all. They're supposed to look overseas, and they can't even look inside the country unless a terrorist, for example, has made a phone call into the country, or you have called a terrorist overseas, and then the only thing that would pop up would be your phone number in the haystack, and then they have to go get a court order. That's what the Second Amendment...
I know that's what it's supposed to say, but every time I open up the Drudge Report, there's another story out there about some low-level guy says, that's not true, we can really listen to the phone calls. I don't know that I trust these guys.
That's why you've got to do more than just a light switch amendment. Amash's amendment just annihilated the entire program, and the best way to get at this is to control the money. The Pompeo amendment was far better because it actually said when you put a prohibition that you can't use the money for 1, 2, or 3, if anyone in the federal government misuses the money to do 4, 5, or 6, it's a felony. it's another reason the appropriations process is so powerful. It is the best tool that we've got to control a lawless, out-of-control White House. And that amendment that I voted for that passed it says you cannot even target Americans. You can't store the content. You can't listen to content. You can't keep the content of any American phone call unless you have a valid search warrant, a court order under the Fourth Amendment as to that specific American, like the Sarnet brothers in Boston. And that amendment will work. So you've got the existing law, which says they can't do it without a court order, and then you tie the money to it and say you can't. There's no money available to you unless you follow the law. You've got kind of a double whammy on them. That's why the Second Amendment that passed, that I voted for, was far better. I didn't want to annihilate the entire program blindly with a sledgehammer. It's far better to tie use of the money to make sure the program's done correctly, because that is another felony violation for anyone who disobeys the appropriations process.
All right, sir. Well, we'll leave it there. What I understand is that the Amash Amendment actually may come back out of the Senate, back to the House again. That's according to Amash. So people are always, for some reason, more proud of their amendments than the bodies are. But he claims that it's coming back. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll love to have you back on to discuss what it does.
Will do. Ed, thank you.
You betcha. Thank you, sir, for joining us from Washington, D.C. John Culberson, one of our conservatives. And frankly, I'll put the questions to him, the ones you want to hear. And what I hear is a current theme from Culberson and McCall and from Brady and from the others in Congress is they don't know what the leadership is calling the play until the last possible minute. I think that's what part of this is. And I think it goes right back to John Boehner and his team. 7:30 on the Voice of Texas.